I hope you're all doing well. I want to make this shorter than the last video because I really didn't intend for it to be that long. It turned out that, going through the whole conversation of everything turned out to take a while. So obviously, this video is about fear of missing out. And there's a reason I'm talking about this, which will become clear in a moment for those of you who don't know me. Now listen, I don't have the right answers, but I do have my perspective, and maybe you can find something valuable in that. And so, yeah, I figured I'd talk about that. So, one of the main ideas that I'm going to go over is that we all make sacrifices, consciously or otherwise. You pay attention to one thing, and you're going to miss out on another. We don't have time to do everything, right? That makes sense. And so you may think, well, obviously, you haven't said anything new, but just because you think that, it doesn't mean you acted out. Now, that's not necessarily a critique of your character, but it's really more the culture that we live in, where everything is so fast-paced, and, a lot of the time, you don't even realize that you don't actually get a chance to even think about, what you're doing and what you have been doing for a long time. So that's sort of why. So quick context for why I'm making this video. I don't have a phone, I never have, and I don't have social media either. Since the COVID-19 lockdown, I've done video calls or Google Chat. My friends have tried to get me into solely messaging services, which, I don't know, obviously I want to talk to my friends, right? But I really don't want to spend too much time just texting or whatever, anything. It's not something that actually appeals to me. So really, if I use anything, it'll be email. Okay, so the fear of missing out is sort of a big thing that keeps people on social media and their phones or whatever. I'm sure you sort of know what that's like if you have experience with those things. What I sort of want to ask as somebody who doesn't have a phone or social media is, if you turn all of that off, what is it that you actually end up missing out on? It might actually be helpful for you to write a list. If I were to stop using social media, maybe at all, or maybe just for this amount of time a day, what would I really be missing out on? So really, I want to just sort of prompt you to ask yourself some questions through this, because I just want to offer my perspective and sort of how I see it, and what I may think could be valuable for you to consider. And, maybe writing this list will reveal to you what it is exactly that you are sacrificing. Now, I don't personally mind people having phones and social media. That's not an issue that I have. But I actually find that, when I talk to people about this in passing, that, they're not crazy about social media. I know that, for some people, they go, oh, this thing's great about it, this thing's great about connection and everything. But a lot of people go, yeah, I don't really like it, but I still do it. I think I said a lot of people. There are people, right? And so when you look at the point of, connection, right? I mean, it's great to get yourself across and, promote whatever you may be doing, whether it's artistic or otherwise. But, for me, somebody who doesn't have a phone, no social media, when I walk around in public places, I'm looking at things. I generally like looking at the sky or particular trees or whatever that looks nice. And so I'm looking around, and I also try to look people in the eyes, because I sort of like to smile at strangers, because, I don't know, you might just smile at the right person, and you might just, make their day, or actually have a positive impact. That would be nice. And so I try to do that, and smile at strangers, and just anyone, people that I know as well, to, and what I notice is that, not all the time, but a lot of the time, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, yeah, no one else is making eye contact, because, everyone's walking around with their heads in their phones, which, again, I'm not specifically criticizing, but I think there could be an issue here, which maybe isn't a very unique opinion. But when it's promoting human connection, in terms of that's what social media is for, and yet you can't walk around in a public place and make eye contact with people. You sort of have to wonder what kind of connection it's really promoting and what kind of connection you're losing, sacrificing. Now, another thing I'd just quickly mention, I typically, really at all, don't feel much pressure or anxiety. I feel it in like small doses maybe, but when I practice being mindful through meditation or whatever, it just sort of reminds me about all the positive things, not in a way that's getting rid of the negative things, but it puts things into perspective. And so, if you're getting caught up in social media and you're really focusing on all that sort of culture, a lot of the time what you see is the highlight reel of people's lives. I'm not confident that people put up things that are terrible of themselves. One thing I'm trying to do with this channel actually is I know that a lot of the stuff that I do isn't perfectly refined, which I've got one issue with, in that I would like to have it refined for your sake, but I also want to work through it and become better as time goes on. And if you can watch that improvement as it goes along, I feel like that could be valuable. And okay, so I'm not as refined as I could be, but I mean, if you want refinement, go to another YouTube channel. Not to go dismissive, but I'm trying to do something different if I can. So yeah, what are you really seeing? How does that sort of highlight reel affect you? Research shows not very well. But I'm actually going to talk about other research. I'm not just going to say research shows. So we'll get onto that later. I actually have a video linked in the description that does talk about the negative effects of social media, so you can check that out if you want. So what I want to pose to you is, maybe you could consider your relationships, what your online relationships are like and otherwise, and then you could think about the effects social media has had on them and what it is really like to see so much positivity from others' lives, and sort of the pressure you may feel to reciprocate that, and maybe the issues when you can't. And then I would ask, considering those things, can you go without social media? If not, I wonder if you've thought about whether you can go without everything that you sacrifice to use social media. For example, eye contact with people. But obviously that's just one example. I feel like a lot of the time, because I'm not caught up in social media, which it's a big thing. You get in that and you're faced with the whole world, right? And that's not to say I don't face the whole world, me personally. I just don't do it through social media. And so what that means for me is that I have more time to relax myself and to enjoy, the present and the beauty of everything. Trees, clouds, relationships, lots of things. And that's really valuable for me, because I feel like it allows for me to be at a certain level of I'm sort of less anxious, maybe, and pressured than everybody else, which does have also its negative effects. Don't worry about that, but for the most part, I do think it's positive. So, another reason that I wanted to talk about this, other than just offering another perspective, is that I think it could potentially be more sustainable to put value into things other than social media for mental health reasons, in that every day I wake up and I've got a morning routine, and so that involves sort of regular sustainable methods of appreciation and gratitude and all that, but there's always something that is sustainably good for me in the mornings, which is nice to have, and with social media, I feel like there's expectations, and for you may want to wake up in the morning and have a message to prove something to you about your relationships, and then maybe it's not there. So maybe if you could shift what you value into more sustainable things, it might be helpful for you. It may be difficult, you may be thinking, like, consider that maybe what I'm saying has some merit to it. Well, what do you suggest then? Like, do I stop using social media? Like, that's difficult. And, I won't challenge that because I've never had to do it. So I can't speak to that. But if you could change your habits, what do you think that would really be like? Would it be better? Like, would you be happier? And if yes is the answer you have to those questions, like, you would be better off, you would be happier, can you really not start taking small steps towards being those things? You know what I mean? It may seem like an insurmountable goal, and maybe you don't see many other people doing it, so it's sort of hard for you to imagine doing, but if it's worth it, maybe you should take some more time to think about how you might actually go about that. So I'm going to refer to some outwards research now because I'm talking about the topic, so I thought it would be relevant. So this is an extract from a clinically reviewed article. Link to this will be in the description. According to a new study by Harvard University, self-disclosure on social networking sites lights up the same part of the brain that also ignites when taking an addictive substance. So it's also important to know the reward area in the brain and its chemical messenger pathways affect decisions and sensations. So it's talking about social media as an addiction, right? So, this is maybe something you want to consider. Now, I've also got, I've sort of given my perspective on it, and how I go about my life vaguely without it. But I've got 3 professional recommendations. From a Dr. Gupta. She specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety and related disorders. She is a clinical director at Therapy Nest, which is a center for anxiety and family therapy in California. Okay, so she's got 3 things. She says, admit that you cannot be everywhere at all times and always be doing the coolest thing ever, and that's okay. And again, this sort of relates to what I said earlier about, you may go, duh, like that's obvious, but you may not act that way, and you may not feel that way. Another thing she recommends is turning it all off, which may not necessarily be viable for you. You might find that very difficult, so you can sort of do it in different ways. And one thing she specifically recommends is just once a day. Like, pick one time a day, like maybe on your bus ride home or whatever from school, anything. Pick a time, like 6 to 7 o'clock, whatever. One time a day. Check your social media to see if there are any important things that have come up. And then she recommends mindfulness. That's the 3rd thing. I'll read exactly what it says. For example, take a mundane daily activity like washing the dishes and try to sense the muscles you use to wash, the scent of the soap, the feeling of bubbles between your fingers. Rather than multitasking or hurrying up these tasks to get onto the next one, appreciate your current state of being. Mindfulness can help those with major fear of missing out, FOMO, enjoy what they are doing in the here and now instead of yearning for what else could be. And yeah, my example of this is when I wake up in the mornings, and all throughout the day, and I take a moment to breathe in and look around outside at nature, which I personally enjoy very much. So, for someone who has never had social media or a phone, it's not hard living this way. Like, it really isn't. I genuinely do not wish that I did have a phone or social media. I feel that a lot of what I see about, the benefits of social media from people that I'm around, I feel like there's just as much negatives. And people even, have said this to me, this isn't exactly the way I want it to be, but it is how it is. And, okay, sure, I'm disconnected in a sense that I don't know everything going on with my friends, all the time right away, but when I do actually get a chance to speak to people in person, I hear about it. So it's sort of a different connection. And, you can assess this yourself, but for me, I value it more in that it's, well, yeah, it's just something that I value more. It feels like maybe we talk about less trivial things, and like I still try to contact my friends just as much as maybe anyone with social media would. It's just by email. That's all. And I'm quite comfortable doing that. Well, that, doesn't bother me none. And another thing, like seeing other people on social media while I'm not on it, like that's fine. Again, I didn't have it in the first place, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. And maybe that's because I place value in areas outside of social media and all the rest of it. And I just, make it known that it's really quite freeing, having like nothing nagging you in the back of your head, like, oh, I don't know, I wonder how many likes this got. I don't know, do you do that? It's sort of peaceful because you're not wondering how people are judging you at this very moment, and you don't even know what they're thinking or saying. Now, you could argue that, I'm different from you in the sense that you'd have to stop social media in the first place, and that it's different for you, harder. So I just ask one thing. Is stopping social media something you actually want to do, and how much do you actually want to do it? I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, just let me know. Sort of done my best to discuss how I live without social media. So yeah, if you want any clarifications or specific questions, just let me know in the comments. Have a good day. Thanks.